The story took place on a stormy night in the castle of Royal Kingdom. The king stood before a man who wasn't actually from this world, and moreover he was very confused about what was going on around him, and why was everyone calling him an unqualified hero. King Baeld sat on his throne while explaining to our protagonist Heiji that he was supposed to be a brave hero summoned from another world. Heiji was really puzzled as it made no sense, but then problems arose when the king asked the magician to come forth. The magician began assessing Heiji, but as he expected, no matter how many times he tried to check Heiji's skills, there was not a single unique skill found in a hero. Heiji questioned everywhere they were speaking, but the magician stated Heiji only had skills like hero growth, universal language, and environmental adaptation. The mages felt doomed as Heiji didn't have a single combat skill, which means even if they conducted the summoning ritual properly, it was a failure. The king shouted at the mages to stop messing around and just behead this useless hero. Heiji was scared as he was not only summoned here by these guys without his will, they now wanted to behead him as well. The mage tried to convince the king to remain composed, but the king couldn't find it in himself to remain calm because now that this summoning ritual failed, they were left with no option but to wait for another 15 years to summon the next hero. So the king didn't see a point why he should let such a fool live. Then the king got angry even at the mage for saying he must have messed up some step for this to happen. The king warned the mages they would be killed after this failed hero, so they shouldn't think about saving themselves by making excuses, otherwise he would even wipe out their incompetent bloodline, roots and all. The mages begged for the king's mercy, but the king didn't want to listen to anything. It was when Heiji tried to save himself by saying that he would do anything he could, but the king cursed there was not a single thing a useless being like him could do. King raged at Heiji and commanded someone to hurry and get this foolish human out of his sight. But right then, a clever-looking minister of the king came forth and claimed he had a brilliant idea. He stated that they should be able to use Heiji as a mere puppet to at least deal with the absence of a hero. And ever since, they declared Heiji as the hero to the public, which was a lie to hide that the summoning ritual was a failure. Meanwhile, Heiji was just confined within the royal palace, and he was only allowed to go outside to masquerade as a hero during the ceremonies. Over the years, the king and his men just reported fake news and victories to the public, while in reality he was just a stand-in for the hero. Now fast forward to 15 years, Heiji came to be known as the ornamental hero, and while he was working with other fellow blacksmiths, they mentioned it was about time for the next hero summoning. Heiji knew this means it was about time for him to part ways with others, so he thanked the blacksmiths for teaching him a lot over these past 15 years. He remembered how he couldn't even hammer a nail back when he started, and others added that despite that, Heiji was now stronger than anyone else around in blacksmithing. They knew it wouldn't be possible to handle the higher-ups without Heiji, but he mentioned it couldn't be helped now because in the end he was just a decorative piece here. Heiji recalled that he toiled for 15 years in the royal forge, and this place was known for its harshness, grime, and danger. He only worked here for days, so compared to working both days and nights in Japan, this was like a walk in the park. Heiji was lost 15 years ago, and he was unable to craft a single nail. Yet here he has come so far, because of which he was really thankful to everyone for being there for him in these years. The blacksmiths here were kind of attached to Heiji in all these years, and ever since he was summoned to this realm, there were tough times, but he managed to find some friends along the way. Until now, his adventure in this otherworldly life had been very fulfilling, and now, he would finally be released after the new hero gets summoned. Later, the king's mages performed the ritual to summon a hero from another world. The king bailed and was really excited because he waited whole 15 years for this moment. Other nobles in the courtroom were also looking forward to the hero's summons, but to everyone's surprise, a girl showed up and asked in confusion where she was. Heiji informed her this was the kingdom of Rorail, and when he asked her name, she replied hesitantly that her name was Kane. Heiji then explained it to her that he was the predecessor of the hero, but she was unknown to what all this meant. It was then one of the mages confirmed that new hero Kane got a unique skill of a mage which had the potential to become stronger than any normal mages. Nobody cared to hear out the new hero Kane, and they already declared the preparations for the grand ceremony to present the hero to the people. The minister claimed now with this hero, their nation should be able to find peace and stability. The king agreed with that, and now for the previous hero Heiji. He announced that Heiji would be given a territory as reward, which might be a bit too grand for him, but it was still a gift as he would be sent to a land adorned with majestic mountains and lush forests, where he could heal his battle-worn body after 15 years of strife. Heiji don't see the point since he never set foot outside the capital until now, but either way, he graciously accepted the reward and prepared himself to head out in a carriage. He bid farewell to his blacksmith friends and thanked them for everything until now. The blacksmiths also wished to see him sometime later and hoped he would come back anytime he wished. Now as he rode the carriage, Heiji realized how he hit the age of 40 before he knew it, and he wondered what his territory was like. He found himself getting teary-eyed more often these days since he was finally about to be free, and even though there were many unpleasant moments, those 15 years in the royal palace were unforgettable for him, and he was sure it only made him stronger somehow. After traveling for 20 days, his carriage rider-driver told him they had arrived at the destination, and Heiji came out while feeling a bit of back pain. The carriage man told him he would be able to see the breathtaking view of his entire realm, so Heiji decided to take a look, but the carriage man seemed a bit off about this. Heiji went to the edge of the hill to look down, but he felt crushed when he saw that this entire territory was nothing but a dense forest. He turned around to ask the carriage man if this was really the place, but to his surprise, the carriage driver was already gone and abandoned him there. Heiji understood now that there was no choice but to move forward, so he ventured into the forest in hope of finding a village or any other human. Soon he came across a small house and he went inside, then looked around. Heiji assessed this place seemed like it hadn't been used in many ages, so he should be able to live here after making some changes with his crafting skills. Heiji checked around the house and noticed there was also a barn at some distance. He went to check it out, and to his surprise, it turned out to be a fire pit, which means this place might have been used by a blacksmith in the past. Heiji thought this might have been a thoughtful gesture of the king to send him here. But either way, there was no way to find out if he was even a decent person or a bastard. Heiji thought the next thing he needed to secure was some water. He didn't see any signs of there being a river around this place, nor any sign of a well either. Then he got an idea and used some water magic to fill a bucket with some safe water. He was grateful for being able to use basic magic, which only left him with finding food. Heiji went into the forest, but there was nothing that looked edible to him, and even if he wanted to plant a field, it would take ages to harvest. He hoped there would be a river nearby so that he could catch some fishes, and that was when Heiji realized he ended up reaching an open field in this forest. This field was full of flowers, and he had no idea a place like this existed. Heiji noticed ahead of him there was something like a pile of gold bars, and when he observed it from close distance, he somewhat felt like this was different than a metal. Suddenly, these gold-like things began moving, and to his surprise, this thing called him noisy as it spread its wings. Heiji was astounded when he saw this thing was actually a dragon that was resting here, and he ended up waking it. It was his first time seeing a real dragon, and he was already fretting what would happen. Then the dragon noticed Heiji smelled a bit strange and asked who he was. Heiji introduced himself as a former hero from another world, after hearing the dragon ask why he was here in this sacred realm, where the divine beasts and spirits of the Dorwida forest coexist. Heiji didn't even know this forest was called the Dorwida forest, and the dragon called itself the guardian of this place, the holy dragon named Cruel. Cruel asked Heiji to get out of here right this instant, as this was no place for a human like him. Heiji couldn't believe he was asked to leave the only place he had. Then suddenly Cruel fell down on the ground with a beam, and Heiji asked what happened. It was when Heiji's eyes fell on a terrible wound around the dragon's stomach, and just from a look he could tell that normal stitching won't work. He asked Cruel if the scales felt pain as well, to which Cruel replied scales don't hurt at all since they were a dragon's armor. Heiji decided to do something about this wound, so he asked the dragon to sit down right while he crafts some tools. Cruel wondered what tools he was planning to make, while Heiji went straight to the forge and checked its condition to make sure there were no leaks in the bellows and other things were working fine. He used basic fire magic to light up the fireplace to set the temperature just right, and he was sure it would forge beautifully as he liked. Heiji was all set now, so he brought out his hammer, which he nicknamed June. He started beating the iron with the hammer repeatedly and formed a couple of thin slits of iron. Heiji placed the slits inside the fire to heat, then reshape it a little from the sides. He kept beating it with determination to retain that shape, and he managed to make a stapler-like iron tool. Now that he finally made one, Heiji didn't wait and started making 10 more of these with focus because he was doing this to save a life. After some time passed, the collapsed holy dragon Cruel opened her eyes slowly, and Heiji was glad she was alive. Cruel asked him why he returned after a few hours, but then the dragon noticed something odd, that the wound wasn't hurting anymore. It turns out that Heiji had crafted stitches made of iron strong enough to withhold dragon's tough scales and close the wound. This much was a piece of cake for him, and next up he prepared a meal filled with healthy ingredients to recover the lost blood and energy. He requested the dragon to have the meal, and once the dragon ate, he asked Cruel how the meal was. Cruel replied the meal was delicious, hearing Heiji stating that if a holy dragon liked it so much, he would make as much as the dragon Cruel wanted. The holy dragon was impressed by Heiji even if he was a human, and Heiji smiled and asked the dragon to take time to rest after this meal. Later that night, Heiji spent his first night in this forest with the holy dragon. Next morning as the sun was rising up, Heiji was being woken up by the holy dragon repeatedly with his name being called. Heiji slowly yawned as he woke up and sat down while hearing the holy dragon Cruel's appreciation for staying all night taking care of her. Heiji told her to stop calling him a human and his name was Heiji. The holy dragon Cruel made sure to remember this name, and it seemed she had transformed into her human form with a dragon tail, and more surprisingly she was looking at Heiji with adorable eyes. She told Heiji he was something else to be able to heal her wounds from iron tools, and while Heiji tried to confirm if she was really the same holy dragon, Cruel raised her top to show him the wound which had almost healed after stitching. Heiji could see the healing was going well, but he requested her to lower her a little bit. He expressed that he was glad to see her back on her feet, for which Cruel thanked him for saving her life, and other than that she stated that she got a favor to ask of him. Heiji wondered what it could be, and to his surprise, Cruel asked him to make her his apprentice and teach blacksmithing as well. This was the day when in this enchanted forest, Heiji crossed paths with the holy dragon Cruel, and his life was about to change in a way he never expected. King Baeld was having dinner in the glamorous dining hall and the minister was standing right beside him. King mentioned that for once, he wondered how all of this will turn out, will waiting for 15 more years be beneficial for him or not. The minister assured him that the new hero Kane, she is someone to compete with and has all the abilities they wanted in a hero unlike Heiji. The minister considered him a fool who was not even worth comparing, whereas for the king he was just a mere decoration. The king sent him to the forest purposely and was sure that the monsters must be pulling his hair by now. After 15 years in the palace, it must be impossible for him to adjust to life outside the kingdom, and he might have already been devoured by monsters by now. Both of them started praising each other's wickedness. Then suddenly a soldier messenger barged through the door all injured. He reported to the king that all the royal knights had suffered a crushing defeat. The minister and the king looked at him with disbelief. The king considered his knight brigade invincible, and he wondered what could go so wrong that the soldiers were getting defeated. The soldier continued and said that it is all because of the weapons they have been using recently. They crumble and armor tears apart like mere paper. The king couldn't believe it, and the minister couldn't think of any good reason why all of this was going on. On the other side in the forest, Cruel the dragon was looking around, and Heiji took her to the place where he has been staying recently. She was thrilled to see the house, but it was nothing more than a forge for Heiji. Cruel bent down the station and started looking at the things which were there, and was asking the uses of it. Heiji got distracted by her bending down over the station, but then asked to show a little decorum as a tough lady. Cruel stopped him and told him that he shouldn't be the one to talk. Heiji gave her a questioning look, and Cruel told him with pride in her eyes that she will be hitting 170 years pretty soon, but she's still a young dragon after considering all the things. She was wearing a crop top so her stomach was partially visible, which made Heiji ask Cruel about the injuries she has on her body. She explained to him that these injuries were given to her by the demon horde while she was setting her sights on the divine beast that dwells in Dorwitha. Heiji found it a bit ominous, but Cruel clarified that she messed up a little that time. Usually she wouldn't lose to anyone. She admired Heiji in a way, so she definitely did not want him to think any less of her. She then asked him if she could be his apprentice. He was shocked to see such determination in her eyes. She smiled and told him that if she can learn to wield iron, she can show off to her kin, and Heiji agreed to her because for him, having Cruel by his side, they will be unstoppable. So with this feeling alright, Heiji stated that now they would start their blacksmith adventure together, hearing that she thanked him and was excited for it just as much as him. Now Heiji was planning to make more weapons, and he proudly told her that he has crafted a mountain of weapons back at his last job, and also that he can forge a mighty kitchen knife. So for now he wanted to start from that. Cruel was confused about what she should do in the meantime, but then Heiji asked her to learn by observing as it is crucial, and to make sure to soak it all in by today. She watched him while he melted iron and started beating it with the hammer repeatedly to shape it, while Cruel observed each step he was performing and almost got done with crafting the knife. Cruel was looking at him with admiration, but then Heiji realized he got lost in the moment and forgot about teaching her, so he apologized for it. However, Cruel was instead more amazed by how thrilling it was to see him whip up that knife in no time. Heiji told her that the task was still not finished, and they had to temper the knife by coating it with wet stone powder and heating it until it dried. Cruel was curious to see the final process of the knife, so she continued to observe Heiji. He explained to her that the knife still lacked resilience, which was basically the force that metal exerts to maintain its own condition, and a person with sheer determination can make it work. Cruel kind of got it was about one's grit, otherwise they would have trouble forging knives, after which Heiji started working again with concentration and Cruel was confused and asking him questions. He explained that when the knife is heated at low temperatures, it becomes wonderfully sticky and all they needed to do was just to sharpen. After sharpening, he showed her the knife which was now finally ready and Cruel couldn't stop admiring it. Now both of them decided to make a bunch of knives and then head to the nearby town to sell them. After some time, both of them headed towards the market and waited for someone to buy their knife. But they did not imagine that not even a single knife would sell. They noticed that the clientele around there was mostly young women and couples. Decorative items and toys fly off the shelves, but that is definitely not the case with hardware. Cruel suggested that if the knives are not selling in the market, maybe they should try to sell swords to a mercenary. He started thinking about her suggestion, but then he saw a group of guys disturbing a lady shop owner. They went near to check what's wrong, and there they saw the gang leader, taking the sword from the women. The woman stated that the sword is one of our prized possessions, and she asked the guys to give it back if they don't want to buy it, but the gang leader started making fun of the sword. He found the blade very dull, and with no name, and then, just to prove himself right, he tried to break it by stomping on it with his leg. He then took out his own sword just to show it off and started telling people its uniqueness, and he even believed that the current trend is the swords made by the royal warrior. He continued appreciating his sword by saying that it's lightweight and built to last and can even slice through demon skin. As per him, there was no way to compete with royal craftsmanship. But while those guys were stomping on the sword of that merchant, they were unaware that the person who used to craft these weapons for the royal empire was hearing their conversation. Cruel got very angry by listening to all of this. She couldn't stand those people anymore and wanted to punch the gang leader and knock some senses into him. Heiji patted her head and asked her to stop because now, he himself wanted to handle the situation, so he walked towards the gang leader, and when that guy noticed, he mockingly called Heiji an old man. Heiji then told the guy that it is good to be proud of the royal craftsmanship, but stepping on a sword is really disrespectful. This made the gang leader angry because he did not like anyone ordering him, so he attacked Heiji with the royal sword. Cruel shouted, but then what happened next left her eyes wide open. Heiji fought back with a knife he crafted which cut the royal sword in 2 pieces. The gang leader was left speechless, and he couldn't believe that his magnificent sword crafted at the Royal Forge of Werrell just broke down into pieces by an ordinary knife. The gang leader got super pissed, and in order to not take any risk, he and his gang left as soon as possible. All the crowd gathered around Heiji and appreciated him for his technique and skills. They did not think that there was a blade that could rival the royal craftsmanship of Werrell. Cruel hugged him and encouraged his skills. The women whom Heiji saved from the gang thanked him and called him a noble swordsman. He then clarified that he is not a swordsman but an ordinary blacksmith. She was shocked to hear that he was a blacksmith because she thought that Heiji defeated the gang leader by his skill of fighting. She did not think that it was because of the knife he crafted himself. She gasped and thought what kind of a knife was it, and a praise which left her shocked, as that it was an S-ranked knife. The item rank breaks down rarity and abilities into 8 dazzling tiers, and its S rank is the second highest rank on the list. The standards have of course been set by the Royal Palace of Werrell, and if the S rank hits the topmost rank, which is SS, then that weapon is considered a legendary relic and a divine artifact from ancient time. Heiji was shocked to hear all of this, and he then looked at the knife he crafted. He couldn't believe that it was a S-ranked weapon. The lady offered Heiji that he sell this weapon to her for 20 gold coins, which was a very big amount for a knife. The lady saw Cruel carrying so many knives in her hand, and then asked if those knives were also crafted by him and his team. She was happy to buy an S-ranked knife, and Heiji couldn't believe that a person is ready to buy his weapon that too for 20 gold coins. The lady handed him over a bag filled with gold coins, and she said that she would like to buy all the 5 knives which he crafted. Heiji was shocked that the going rate in this world is about 1 gold coin for 10,000 yen, and by that he just made 1 million on his very first day of selling weapons. After that, Heiji sat down with the merchant Filnal at a food place. Filnal introduced herself and thanked Heiji for the support, whereas Heiji replied it was a pleasure to meet her, But he was concerned about one thing, that she could really part with 10 gold coins since she was wearing ragged and torn clothes. Filmo stated she was ready to buy something on credit if the value was worth it. But Heiji knew this much, that this behavior could be concerning for a merchant. So he firstly wanted to lay down some conditions for the deal, which was that he wanted to forge an exclusive contract saying he won't supply knives to any other merchants, and wanted to make sure Filmo was always in the middle of every deal. Filmo stood up in shock because she never expected to gain monopoly over an S-rank knife production. She asked Heiji if he was really okay with it, to which Heiji replied that this was fine with him since he has never been good at socializing, and he prefers to keep the tasks for him and Cruel to a minimum. So he wanted her help with handling all the necessary procedures, hearing which Filmo replied it would be an easy task for her. After that, Heiji gave her a map with his location inside the forests, and he hoped she would come to pick up other goods someday and might need it. Filmo was left utterly astounded and had to ask if he really lived in the forests of Dorwitha. Heiji didn't really have an excuse to give. But that aside, Cruel spoke up and told Filmo that she got lost in the woods, she just had to shout and Cruel would come to rescue her. Filmo asked if Cruel was some beast man, but Cruel casually yawned and revealed she was a holy dragon. At this answer, Filmo was taken aback, as this means Cruel was actually the guardian spirit of Dorwitha Forest. Heiji just chuckled as it was too much to explain how everything occurred, and they just finalized the deals they had to discuss and called it a day. Later that night at Heiji's house, he prepared a dinner for both of them, and Cruel was excited to see a feast in front of her eyes. She dug in right away and expressed how amazing it was to see Heiji could cook, as well adding to other things he was good at. She really liked the dinner and thanked him for treating to a feast, then said she would also get him something later. Heiji asked what she was planning to bring him, to which she replied that she planned on hunting down a wild boar, which was a bit bigger than the usual ones, and for that purpose she borrowed the bow from Heiji to hunt the boar. But the very next day, Cruel roared out loudly, and her roars echoed throughout long distances, which made Heiji to come and check out what happened to Cruel. She turned back into her human form and was crying because she ended up breaking the bow she borrowed earlier. Heiji patted her head to comfort her while she said that she spotted a wild boar, but when she pulled an arrow, the bow snapped in two. Heiji understood it wasn't odd considering her strength. Then she added that she later even transformed into a dragon to chase after the wild boar, but it managed to slip away through a cave that was too small for her to enter. Heiji calmed her down and promised he would craft a bow that could handle her strength, hearing her face lit up in joy. After that, Heiji went to his forge and thought about how he should go about making the bow, since using iron for bow would be inefficient and less accurate due to heaviness. Thus, he wanted to make the bow out of a lighter material, and it brought him to look around if there was some other material in the forge. Heiji came across a box filled with light silver, and he couldn't believe his eyes because the timing couldn't have been better. He went and called out Cruel and asked her if she could dig a hole outside for him. Cruel didn't get why, but she still went and transformed half into her dragon form to make the hole in the ground. Heiji stopped her when she ended up digging way too deep. Then Cruel asked him why he wanted a hole in the first place. Heiji replied it was so that he could craft a bow using this very hole. First he went and prepared the sand mold, then prepared the wooden mold, for which he used a wooden rod and made it stand straight into the hole by filling the rest part. And lastly, he used a little bit of earth magic to harden the soil back again. Heiji then pulled out the wooden mold, and they saw that the ground now had a shape the same as the wooden stick. Now he moved on to the main part of the forge, so he went and poured the molten metal into the pot and asked Cruel to lift it. Surprisingly enough, she lifted the pot with her bare hands, and when he asked if she was okay since the molten metal was extremely hot, Cruel just replied it was fine since her flames burned much hotter than this. Now she asked if she was supposed to pour this molten metal into the hole they made in the ground earlier, which surprised Heiji to see she was learning quickly. Once it cooled down, Heiji dug out the sides and said it was time to pull it out. Cruel was excited for this part as she pulled the cooled metal at once out of the mold. She moved it around and remarked it was light as a feather, and Heiji told her this was actually a bit different than iron, and in his world it was called aluminium. It was Cruel's first time hearing about this metal, while Heiji informed her this material was tough and easy to shape, so now he needed to bend it into a bow. Cruel claimed she would bend this rod then, but Heiji didn't believe it since it was made up of a mixture of a couple of elements, so even Cruel would have a hard time with it. But Cruel just ended it with her hands, after which Heiji used the dragon's mane for the bowstring. Cruel tried pulling the bow, but after she shot the arrow turned out to be weaker than they needed. Heiji got another job of making arrows, but Cruel was already happy enough because the bow was perfectly intact. After the arrows were made, Cruel called for a feast by hunting, but Heiji was kind of concerned for her, and he also wanted to see if the bow really works well. So he asked Cruel if he could tag along and look. She didn't mind it at all. After some time, they traveled some distance until Cruel spotted a wild boar of very huge size, seeing which Heiji asked if they were really going to hunt down something like that. She agreed and told him to just watch. So Cruel as she pulled an arrow and aimed sharply with her dragon eyes. Heiji hoped she won't overdo it this time, but right then she shot the arrow with such strength that it pierced even wind. Cruel looked at the arrow landing on the boar and actually sending it flying few meters away from the impact. Heiji covered his face due to dust, while Cruel was feeling really nostalgic after getting the shot. She remarked it was an amazing bow he made, but Heiji told her that it was actually her who was truly incredible. Cruel told him it was just that his bow was the real deal, while Heiji was still surprised she got it down in one shot, especially with the plain aluminum now. And if it wasn't that, Heiji started having thoughts about how was his craftsmanship in reality. Later they went home and Heiji cooked up a feast made out from the boar that Cruel hunted down. She asked him what this brown soup was, to which he replied that this soup was based on miso, which is a seasoning made by fermenting soybeans with salt and koji. And either way, it was sure to be delicious, so she should give it a try. Cruel started eating, and right after her first bite, she was left amazed by how delicious this was. Heiji was glad he learned to make this back in the palace, and he told her to enjoy as much as she wanted. Now while she was having meal, Heiji was puzzled as his craftsmanship was still a mystery, leaving him wondering how on earth did he manage to whip up an S-rank knife. He recalled having been nagged by his master all the time, and at that time he thought it was because he was making waste tools of D or E rank. Heiji wondered how his master was doing these days. Meanwhile, Heiji's master, who was a middle-aged man with a good blacksmith's body, was wondering the same about how Heiji might be right now. Other blacksmiths were surprised since it was unusual to hear Heiji's name being mentioned from their boss's mouth, since they thought that boss disliked Heiji. Boss asked whatever they mean by him disliking Heiji, to which they mentioned that they think so because the boss was always telling it Heiji, because he never crafted things according to the rank he specified. And given that, it made them wonder what rank sword and armor Heiji actually made, since the boss was the only one who knew that. The boss replied that they were at least a rank which shocked the other blacksmiths, and boss reasoned that he never told Heiji that because if he tell him, Heiji might get a big head about it, and besides if the specified rank was B, he wanted Heiji to stick to that, only not go above. The blacksmith stated if Heiji made a rank tools, then it should be a good thing, and he should have become a famous blacksmith already. But then boss yelled at them, calling them fools, and told them to just imagine what would happen if a ranked weapons were to be given to those run-of-the-mill soldiers, who were sure to start causing troubles after getting them. So the boss avoided that since it would be too reckless, and the blacksmiths understood now what his point was. But they wondered why Heiji was kicked out despite being so capable, and the reason for that was not known even to the boss. But in any case, he remarked that this country was already doomed now. Meanwhile, back in the Doruida forest, Heiji called out to Cruel to ask for help, and she came yawning in sleep, then questioned Heiji what was he up to even on the day he was about to take rest. She noticed he made a fireplace outside, and Heiji told her that he wanted to try something out. He was thinking that the secret to S-rank tools might lie in that forge, so he wanted to see if a makeshift forge would be different. He asked Cruel to help out with managing the temperature, after which he got started with forging while she brought water and did errands. Heiji beaded the knife, and soon enough he crafted a knife, which looked really good to Cruel, just like the one made in forge. Now Heiji thought that since he lacked appraisal skills to check the rank of the knife, he would need to test it out. So he saw a wooden base log and placed the part of the sword he cut with his knife back then. Cruel asked him what it was for since it was dangerous for him, but Heiji still went ahead and tested it out by hitting that sword with his knife. This time the knife managed to cut halfway through the sword, while Heiji recalled that the previous knife cut the whole sword in two before. So this made him think that the knife he made outside was around A rank, which means some kind of forge was at play in that forge. Cruel told him it must be his skills, then she suddenly picked up some sounds and went running while saying they got a customer around. Heiji was confused, but she just transformed into a dragon to pick them off. Heiji looked into the sky for a while, and Cruel returned soon enough with the so-called customer, which turned out to be Filna. They went to Heiji's house, and Cruel apologized for startling her, but she was fine since she heard the tales of the Holy Dragon. However, she mentioned that next time she would prefer coming here on a wagon instead. Cruel told her that the forest of Doruida was home to magical beasts, so wandering without protection was very dangerous. Thus, if she had a wagon, she could still call for Cruel. Filnal understood she would have to come here the same way as now, so she proceeded to talk about the main topic and mentioned she had a complaint about the knife. Heiji and Cruel were shocked to hear a complaint about his knife, and Cruel was mad about why Heiji's incredible knife he talked bad about. Heiji calmed down Cruel and asked Filnal what happened, to which Filnal replied that it was just too much as the sharpness of the knife was way more than needed. She described that the knife was bought by the head chef of a place, but it seems that a rookie accidentally dropped the knife and the knife barely missed hitting the foot of theirs. So fortunately things were safe, but what happened next was truly astonishing as the blade of the knife cut the floor all the way deep to its hilt. Heiji and Cruel were shocked upon hearing this kind of complaint, whereas Filnal got on her knees to request from Heiji that even though he has incredibly extraordinary skills, she needs him to craft her a knife that was just a little bit dull than an S-rank sharpness. Heiji felt like asking for a dull knife was like denying his craftsmanship honed over the years, but he still understands how Filnal feels, and yet she requested him that. So he asked her to lift her head and said they would now work on crafting a knife that never dulls. He considered that thinking just about sharpness was his ego as a craftsman, so now he would only consider making something that the user would want at best. Filnal was thankful for his understanding, after which Heiji showed her a knife that he forged just a few moments ago. Filnal appraised it, and she was surprised since it was no ordinary knife, but an A-rank masterpiece. Filnal's appraisal confirmed it that knife forged by Heiji was an A-rank, so the reason why the knife made and forged came out to be S-rank remained unknown. Now that aside, he asked Filnal if this knife was worth approving, he would get started on crafting it. She thanked him for that, and a few days later Filnal returned on wagon and informed Heiji with a smile that they have sold out everything. Heiji asked if that was really the case, and Filnal stated they truly hit a jackpot by targeting the homemaker crowd. Heiji thanked Filnal's brilliant marketing, which played part in this, whereas Filnal remarked it was just his craftsmanship, which made that quality of knives. She mentioned they also got additional orders, so she requested him to start making more knives like 10 of them. Heiji was surprised by getting 10 pre-orders for his knife, while Filnal was cool about it and told him that she believes the era of Blacksmith Heiji is near. Heiji smiled after hearing that and called it a day for now. Meanwhile, somewhere around Doruda Forest, when it was raining and lightning, a beast girl seemed to be all crying because she got lost from her parents and now looking around for them all alone in this dark forest. Meanwhile, back at Heiji's house in the middle of rain, he was a bit troubled by water leaking through the ceiling. He figured that he needed to sort this out quickly. Then Cruel sneaked up behind him and scared him by shouting out of the blue. She laughed and asked if that surprised him, to which he asked why was she making a face like that. Other than that, he thanked her for going out and patching up the roof temporarily for now, while it was not a big deal for her. But Heiji was worried since she was completely soaked, and when Cruel tried to act cool, she sneezed. Then Heiji's eyes noticed her soaked body. He quickly shook himself off to not look and went to prepare some warm rice and a dish for them for dinner. She asked him what was the main dish, and Heiji showed her it was the boar meat they hunted down the other day, but as a different dish. Cruel noticed the meat looked so tender and the taste was just much better than she ever had. Heiji told her she didn't have to be so excited each time while eating, but she couldn't help it since every dish Heiji made was absolutely delicious. Now all Heiji needed was some spices to make it perfect. However, he came to realize this world doesn't have all the spices or soy sauce like Japan, but there were still some things in this world which seemed to have been passed down by the heroes of the past who might have come here just like him. Now he prayed before eating his meal, but then he noticed that his bowl vanished from the table. He thought Cruel was the one who took it, but she denied, saying she was even supposed to take his portion in the first place. Then Heiji questioned who could have taken his portion, but then she quieted him and signaled there was something under the table. Both of them looked down, and at once in there, they were surprised to see a beast girl under the table who stole Heiji's portion of food and ate it desperately. She tried running away, but Cruel caught her and asked how dare she steal Heiji's food. The girl apologized and said she was just hungry, but Cruel didn't want to let this go. Then Heiji calmed her, and just a glare from her was punishment enough. He went to the poor girl and figured she must be tired since she was drenched, which means she was outside in the rain for a while. Shun told him that she was out there searching in the rain. Heiji introduced himself and asked her what she was searching for in this extreme rain, hearing which she suddenly bursted into tears and requested him to help her look for her parents. After that, they first changed her into dry clothes and herd her out, saying she was lost. Cruel wasn't all that excited, and she mentioned that Shun seemed to be from White Wolf tribe. Heiji was surprised to hear that because White Wolf tribe was only heard in legends, claiming that they dwell in the forests of Doruwitha. Heiji's attention was completely on this fact, while Cruel was feeling annoyed that he was paying so much attention to just a divine beast. She reminded him that this forest was home to divine beasts and spirits, and each divine beast claimed its own territory, except for the White Wolf tribe who were wandering beasts. Heiji asked how come they keep wandering around in just a forest, and she told him that this forest was about the size of 20 human cities. Heiji was surprised to hear it was worth 20 cities, which was ridiculously large, and what's more, a poor soul was lost in such a grand forest. Cruel told Heiji not to feel sorry for Shun, since there was a possibility that she did something to tick off the leader of her pack. Heiji asked Shun if she was kicked out of the tribe, to which she denied and said she was just a little one among her tribe, so she was slow on feet. And the moment she lost sight of her tribe while moving around, they vanished into thin air. Heiji understood she got lost because she couldn't keep up with the pack, which was why she must be crying out of desperate loneliness of being separated. Heiji could understand how she must feel, since the time when he was summoned to this world he was all alone, and was even about to be killed without having a soul around who knows him. So he bent a little and patted her, saying she didn't need to fret, and he promised to track down her parents for her. Shun stopped crying thanks to his efforts, while Cruel stood there not wanting to oppose Heiji's decision. Later, they ventured into the forest after rain to look for Shun's parents, and she was happily walking ahead knowing she got support. Heiji told her not to get carried away, or she would end up hurting himself. She told him not to worry, but the same moment her feet stuck into a branch and she was about to fall. Heiji caught her before she fell, and she thanked him for the help. But this made Cruel a little mad. Cruel told Heiji not to spoil Shun too much, but Heiji didn't want to be harsh with Shun since she was just a child. Cruel argued that since Shun was a divine beast, making her soft wasn't a good thing, especially in a harsh place like Doruwitha Forest. Heiji was glad, and hearing that only made Cruel mad, while Heiji told her that he was glad because he saw that Cruel had been thinking about Cruel in her own way, and he thought before if Cruel didn't like Shun. Cruel got shy and she walked away, saying it doesn't matter since in the end it was all noisy. Heiji covered his face as Cruel transformed into her dragon form and decided to take a quick look from the sky while those two waited here. It was Shun's first time seeing a dragon, so she was amazed as she watched Cruel fly away. Meanwhile, Heiji decided to wait and craft something here for defense. It's been a while, and he realized Cruel hadn't returned yet, and when he looked at Shun, she seemed to have fallen asleep while waiting. Heiji now understands why it got quiet all of a sudden since she slept, and he patted her out of care and thought he should craft a comb for her next time. He noticed that he was becoming some kind of parent, but still it was quite the mystery how his life would go on in this mysterious forest. Suddenly, some carnivorous hounds showed up near them, and Shun picked up sounds just in time and got alerted. Heiji was about to ask her what happened, then she quieted him and kept looking at the bushes. Heiji was confused as he followed her gaze. Shun alerted him that there were ash hounds nearby them. Heiji recalls those monsters were ranked C-class, but they could be troublesome if they're in a group. Heiji asked her which way was safer, and once she told him that, Heiji carried her to make a run for it. Shun asked him what about his tools that got left behind, to which he simply replied they could pick it up later. Heiji was running as fast as he could while carrying Shun, and at the same time those ash wounds were following them. Shun chuckled as she was impressed by how fast Heiji was, and he replied it was simply because he was once a hero, and even if he didn't have any unique skills, he was still more powerful than ordinary humans. He was about to reach his forge and planned on using the fire to scare away those ash wounds, but when he thought he would be out of the forest soon, an ash hound managed to corner him from the front, and instantly the other ones caught up to him as well. Heiji got surrounded by these clever ash hounds, and now that he was cornered, he lowered Shun and stepped in front with the knife he was carrying. Heiji was a bit scared because there were just too many monsters around them, and fighting while protecting Shun would be tough. Then Shun stepped forward, and when he asked her to get back, she started screaming out as loud as she could to scare the hounds off. Heiji was surprised, and he felt guilty to look at her giving her best while he was afraid. He thought Shun was becoming more of a hero than he was. He refused to act scared now despite being a hero, and felt mad about how he wouldn't be a man if he couldn't even protect a single child. Heiji prepared himself, and when the ash hound charged to attack him, Shun flinched, and suddenly there was a pool of blood which was caused by Heiji slashing the hound with his knife. After he managed to take one down, Heiji was relieved, thinking this should work as he saw one dead ash hound right in front of him. However, other ash hounds showed no signs of backing down at all, and he couldn't think of other ways to get out of this. But right then the situation got worse when Heiji spotted another ash hound which was bigger than others, which means it must be the leader of the pack of wolves. He now had no choice but to take down that leader of hounds, and right at this moment, Cruel arrived right behind Heiji. She seemed extremely pissed off after witnessing some mere hounds bully Heiji and Shun. Heiji and Shun were relieved to see Cruel here, and she pushed back the whole pack of ash hounds with her dragon slashes. Some of the hounds were even killed by just that. Then Heiji realized that those wolves were escaping near the forge. It was when a group of other beastmen arrived right in front of ash hounds, and without needing to ask or look around, they knew who they had to kill, so they charged right through and killed the ash hounds. After that, one of them came forward and mentioned to Heiji it seems like his daughter Shun had been in his care. Heiji understood it means this must be the White Wolf clan, and Shun's parents thanked him for protecting her. Cruel transformed into a human and came running straight to Heiji and hugged him because she was really worried about him before. And now she was relieved now that he was safe and apologized for leaving him all alone back there. Heiji hugged her back while Shun also returned to her parents and cried on this happy reunion. After that, Cruel thanked Shun for keeping Heiji safe, as Cruel could only tell their location when she heard Shun's cries, and by the type of cries she also understood Shun was protecting Heiji. So Cruel thanked her a lot for doing that, and as the day progressed it was about time for everyone to return. Heiji was still doing something as he attached a bell to Shun's neck, and when she asked what that was, Heiji said it was like a god's bell, and it would help others know by sounds where Shun was. The White Wolf clan appreciated that, and when Heiji asked if she liked it, Shun nodded and thanked him for that. Heiji wished her to take care of herself. Shun bid farewell to them, and Heiji and Cruel were glad Shun was with her parents now. But after some time, Heiji was unsettled when his breakfast was stolen, and he thought Cruel was behind this. Cruel got mad because she wasn't behind this at all, and then both of them realized something was familiar about this, and it turns out that Shun had come back to them and stolen Heiji's breakfast again, while she excused to have wandered away from the group again. Meanwhile, in the kingdom of Worrell, it was raining heavily when the boss Blacksmith was walking down the corridor taking a look outside at this nuisance rain. It kept pouring hard over the castle, and he came across someone yelling at some workers to fix the leaks in the ceiling. The guy yelling out was the wicked minister, and he ordered the workers to fix the leaks as soon as possible before the water stains the carpets with blue roses dyed on it. The minister was surely troubled to peak, and the boss Blacksmith was finding it funny because he knew the minister took it upon himself. Other blacksmiths mentioned to the boss how come it was leaking everywhere around the castle, but their forge seemed to be doing alright, as if it would last 100 more years. Boss Blacksmith nodded it surely was great. Along with it, he mentioned it had been 15 years since Heiji showed up, and now it was funny how they are troubled by the rain just now. The blacksmiths admired how well the roof of forge was made, and it seemed beautiful just as much. Boss Blacksmith told them to get back to the forge, and he glanced at the tiles while wondering what Heiji might be doing right now. Meanwhile, back in the Dorwida forest, Cruel and Shun asked Heiji what they would be doing today. Heiji stated that the cabin's been feeling a bit cramped these days, so he was planning on doing some renovations. For details, he planned on first knocking down some walls to add a few more rooms, since they never knew when Shun would come back next time after getting lost again and needed room for her. And while they were at it, they would also replace the tiles on the house to match the forge. Cruel wondered what tiles were, and Heiji told them they were basically bricks made from clay, and were heat resistant. And when they go for a tiled roof, it keeps things cool in the summer and cozy in the winter by trapping heat. Cruel thought of it as similar to her scales, which was a pretty accurate guess. Now Heiji said they should head to the mountain to gather some clay right away. He went along with those two and dug out some clay, and Cruel carried out the heavy clay back to the house. Heiji was glad to have her here, and once they returned back to the house, he told them the next step was to get their hands dirty with some clay by beating it a little. But Shun played with the clay and made a figure that looks like Cruel. Heiji thought it was incredibly well made, especially the details of her body, which made him think Shun might have some artistic talent. Now he asked Shun if she would like to help out with clay work. Then Shun noticed a large machine-like thing and asked what was that, and Heiji assured her it wasn't a dangerous thing, but just a pusher machine. He showed them step by step, starting from adding the materials into the pusher machine, then shaping the clay with the help of a pressing tool with all his might. And soon enough, the machine pushed a tile-shaped structure out. Now he mentioned that he needs to cut these shapes evenly and be careful before they dry and crumble. Cruel and Shun helped out with the cutting process, after which they arranged the tile-shaped clays and let them dry for a few days. In the meantime, Heiji started preparing the kiln to fire the clay. for which he asked Shun and Cruel to dig a hole outside as a temporary kiln. They followed his instructions and dug out a kiln the way he wanted. Now they immersed the tiles in glaze and let them dry once more so they harden up more. And lastly, he carefully arranged the tiles around the kiln, and after some time of heating, the tiles were finally completed. They cheered up on the completion of tiles, and Cruel was mingling after seeing the completed tiles. Heiji next instructed them to help him line up the tiles up on the roof. After they carried out this whole process, Cruel asked if this was the end, but he told them to be patient as they still need to check for leaks in tiles just to be safe. He used his water magic to check the leaks in tiles, but mistakenly all the water fell on him after flowing down the roof. However, the tiles seemed fine and Shun confirmed no water leaked inside the tiles. Cruel was joyous as this means they were finally done with the tile work after working together. Heiji was glad that when he was just blacksmithing back then, he worked on many odd jobs as well that the boss blacksmith asked of him, including the tile work that was done on the forge in the royal castle. Heiji had spent a lot of time doing the tiles that he ended up doing the whole roof of the forge by herself, but didn't have time to do the casket tiles, so he couldn't say how the castle's condition was in rain. Next up, Heiji cooked up something and asked Cruel to bring the hot pot over. She asked him what was cooking in the pot, and he told her she could take a peek in it herself. She opened the pot and saw there were cooked potatoes in it. They started having the potatoes, and the Heiji told them to wait a second because the special savior to make it more delicious was yet to be added, as he brought out a box of butter. Cruel asked what was that, but Heiji proceeded to show them directly as he cut a little butter, and placed some of it on a potato, then asked them to taste this divine combo now. Cruel and Shun tasted the potato and butter combination, and once they did, they couldn't stop eating it since it was so delicious. Heiji recalled that butter was a luxury item in this world, so feeding them butter was a well-deserved reward for all their hard work. A few days later, Heiji was in need of some wood, so he chose a tree to cut. But when he was about to swing his axe, suddenly Heiji heard a voice telling him to stop. Heiji felt a push as a glowing orb and wondered what this light thing was. Then Cruel asked Heiji in anger why he was going to chop down the Dorwida tree. Even Shun knew they could get scolded for this, but Heiji was confused and asked were they really going to be in trouble for just cutting down a tree and by whom. Cruel told him it was the spirit of Dorwida itself, whereas Heiji was surprised as he thought Dorwida was just the name of the forest. Cruel told him that Dorwida was good for this forest, and if Heiji were to cut down trees without permission, Dorwida would be furious. Shun admitted she was right about that, and the spirit of Dorwida was more powerful than her entire clan, so it wasn't wise to make the spirit angry. Heiji asked what makes a spirit so scary, to which Cruel replied that Heiji was the worst to even want to know that, because the spirit of Dorwida could literally make someone's existence vanish from this world. Heiji asked her then what was this glowing light in front, and she replied it was a kind of half-spirit that sometimes appears in a radiant form and was basically the spirit of Dorwida in a physical form. Heiji asked them what they should do since he needed wood to expand the cabin, in response to which Cruel replied that in times like these he would need to make an offering to Dorwida. It was then Heiji heard the voice of spirit asking him if she craved some butter. Heiji excused that he was completely out of butter, but right then the spirit of Dorwida said she knew butter was hidden in a wooden box next to the workbench in the forge. Upon hearing this, the first ones who got triggered were Cruel and Shun, who were angry after knowing they were lied to about butter being exhausted. Heiji couldn't speak his way out of this one, so in the end he ended up offering a buttered potato to the spirit of Dorwida. Cruel told him that Dorwida's spirit gladly accepted the offering and was absolutely thrilled by it. Heiji couldn't quite tell how they could understand the spirit, but then the spirit itself told Heiji that he could cut the wood, but he must use it wisely and cherish it. After saying that, the spirit of Dorwida went away, and some time later Heiji was finally done with the renovation of his house. However, he was unaware of the person who was about to come looking for him even in the midst of these forests. Sometime prior to this, there was a fight in a place where the same guy who was causing trouble to Heiji and got his sword cut was being thrown to the wall. The one who throwed him like this seemed to be a dark elf sword woman, and she didn't want to waste her time and sword on fighting a riffraff like this. The spectators who saw her praised her for helping them get rid of that troublemaker guy, and the place owner offered her food in the house. But the thing that the dark elf wanted more than anything was to ask something else as she held her hand. The lady told her she wasn't that kind of woman and already had a husband. Then the dark elf asked if she wanted to know who crafted the knife she was wielding. The lady replied she got it from a traveling merchant named Philnal who supplies their shop. The dark elf ventured out right away to find this merchant, while the people talked behind that a dark elf female swordsman of this skill could only be one person, the legendary swordswoman named Belle, or she went by her nickname the legendary Purple Lightning Belle. Back at his house, Heiji was working in his forge as always, and Cruel was also crafting something under his supervision. She ended up making a knife herself and asked him how it looked. Heiji took a look at the knife and observed it, while Cruel was nervous about how it was. Then Heiji told her that she splendidly showed spirit and crafted a good knife for her first attempt. Cruel cheered up after her first good item, whereas Heiji found it impressive how she was fearless of the heat, which could help her become a truly amazing blacksmith one day. He praised her for having natural talent, and she thanked him since it wouldn't be possible without him, and the only reason she was able to make it was because Heiji was her master. Heiji got flustered after being called master, and she started teasing him for blushing like that. He tried to deny he wasn't blushing, but it was clear, and to be frank, he never heard that before. She smiled brightly and thanked him again for praising her work. Then at the same time, Shun came and told Heiji and Cruel that dinner was ready. They sat down together to have dinner as Shun brought out some rice cakes. Cruel was excited to try it right away, and she was curious about what was inside it. Shun kept the ingredients inside a secret, and when Cruel tried it out herself, she saw there was a boiled egg inside the rice cake, and it was nicely seasoned and delicious. But when Heiji tried the rice cake with high hopes, he was a little taken aback by something sweet inside the rice cake he tried. He asked Shun what was that, to which she replied it was strawberries, after hearing that Heiji couldn't say bad about the food, but he appreciated her efforts for making it and ate quietly. Shun was glad that he liked it, so she was excited to make another batch of these rice cakes, but Heiji told her that he wanted to feed them something different so he would cook next time. A few days later, Heiji and Cruel worked together in the forge to finish up making another batch of knives, which also included those 10 pre-orders. Cruel was kind of curious, and she asked Heiji why don't they make some swords to bring more profits. Heiji was concerned even if he knew that his swords would definitely sell out right away. He didn't want to do that, and was fine with knives for now. He asked Cruel if it was about time they were near the deadline for orders set by Filnal, and she asked him if she should go and check on her. At the same time, they heard Filnal's voice, and they went outside to greet her, and found out she came in the carriage this time. Filnal firstly apologized for the delay, and she also mentioned that someone else was also here who wanted to meet Heiji. Heiji wondered who it could be, and then a dark elf walked towards him and apologized for coming without being invited like this. She requested not to blame Filnal for bringing her here. After seeing a woman with a sword, Cruel got on alert and asked who she was. Belle was a bit astounded by the sudden hostile question, and she proceeded with first introducing herself properly as Belle, while her full name was Belphebia, which she wasn't proud of since it wasn't cute to hear. Heiji didn't know a person could dislike their own name, while Shun hid behind Heiji because she wasn't good with meeting strangers. Whereas, when Belle saw Shun, she was mesmerized by how cute Shun was, and she recognized right away that Shun was a white wolf. She never met one before, and now she couldn't stop hugging one, while Shun was pretty overwhelmed by sudden hug. She pushed away Belle, but then Belle went and hugged Cruel instead. She found even Cruel's muscles impressive and cute, even if she wasn't sure which species she was. Cruel freed herself and ran to Heiji, and he asked Belle to stop since both Cruel and Shun were uncomfortable. And more importantly, he asked her what does she need from him.